Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome to the July Book Club. We are here. Cheryl and I are now up in Michigan for a little bit and enjoying the cooler weather and the thunderstorm that rolled through this afternoon. While Barb, you're still down at the big sanctuary, and you're also enjoying some cooler weather, I hear.
Cooler weather and a thunderstorm. So
Thank you,
Does
Jesus,
that
for
mean it
cooler
went under
weather
100?
and thunderstorms. Under 100. Yeah, Kristen. What is it, Barb?
Kristen, under 90. Fasten your seatbelt. I mean, that's like amazing. We have a whole week of rain showers and temperatures that are high in the 80s. So it's
You're never gonna guess what the weather was here in New Jersey today. Slightly cooler in a thunderstorm.
Okay, Kay, what about you, hon?
I'm in Federal Way, Washington. It's in the high 70s.
Cooler in a thunderstorm? Or no, thunderstorm?
No, no thunderstorm. Thank you very much.
And Cynthia, you're in southern Michigan, where Cheryl's going to be in just a little while. She's so excited to come
Oh,
and
good.
be at
My
your
book
book
club.
club with the author. And anyway, so I don't want to steal her thunder. She almost talks about it every day, so she's
Okay.
excited to
Well,
meet.
it's 82 here, and it's been in the 70s all week, and we have had not only terrible thunderstorms, but we had a tornado go through, which is very unusual.
Woo, it is unusual. Michigan is normally somewhat
Yeah,
untouched by God's wrath of weather, aren't we? We're very lucky
yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
By the
Well,
time it goes across the lake, it dissipates, see, so it never quite makes it here.
yeah, we always see it and then we're like, is it gonna make it? Is it not gonna make it? Or
Yeah,
sometimes, like today, we got a really nice, but it's also, isn't it just beautiful when that really wonderful summer warm downpour and you know that everything gets watered by
yeah.
God instead of by our hoses and by our sprinklers and I don't know. I love it. I love it. I love it. But Cheryl, these folks are all yours as
All
usual.
right.
Have fun, y'all.
All
And
righty.
Kristen, say hi to Kristen. Kristen's driving right now, which is why you can't see her real face. That's a nice picture though, Kristen. And we'll
I'll
see
be there
you
in a moment.
shortly.
All right.
It's a July night, and unfortunately, we had a number of people call in that were doing other things, not quite as important, not quite as much fun, but just they couldn't make it to be here with us. So, Cheryl, all yours, son. Love you.
All right. Thank you. All right. 2054. I kind of wish that my sister Kelly was here because she read 2034. Did you say you read it too, Cynthia?
No, I looked at it. I did not read it.
Oh, you looked at it? Okay. Because
Kristen
I
did,
did, I
Cheryl.
did, I did.
Kristen
you
did.
did?
Do I get
Oh,
extra
good.
credit?
Oh, good. So, because the thing is, I thought, God, there's so many people in here and so many situations. And she said, even though they said you can read this without reading 2034, she said if you'd read 2034, it would be easier to understand,
So, without going into a lot of details, I'll say I had mixed thoughts, right? Because I remember her saying that. When
Right.
I started, I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. And I will say that a lot of the main characters in 2054 are the children of the main characters in 2034, or
Really?
they're a
Oh,
younger person now 20 years older and seniors. That was really cool.
Yeah.
But there were times, especially in the beginning of the book, when I wished I'd not read 2034 because it's while it is like the Descendants and it makes sense and has a similar theme, it's different enough that I kept part of me kind of wanted it to be the same and it was different. And I think I might have appreciated it a little bit more earlier on for itself. So I don't think you had to, you did not have to read it. But if you want to go back, you can read about the older generation. So definitely could do them in the opposite order and get some fun out of it.
Okay. I just have one question. Is Sarah in 2034?
Sarah is, what's the last name?
Hunt. Hunt.
Sarah, yes, yes, Sarah Hunt, yes,
yeah,
yes,
she
the,
would
the
have been.
mother, yes,
Okay.
yes, she's a main,
That would
main,
be the
main, main, main
one
character.
person. Yeah, I was going to say that would be the one person I'd want to read about in
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah, super main character in 2034.
Okay. Okay, cool. So, given all that, what are y'all's impressions of this book?
Well, it was very complicated, but it was very interesting in the sense of predicting the future, because that's always on, everybody's list right now. And but again, I am not a bit surprised to see the turnout tonight. Not only is it summer, but in my other book club, we find that the difficulty of the book determines the number of people that show up.
Oh,
In fact, we kind of made a rule: no more books over 500 pages. It was just you just knew you'd get a very low turnout.
yeah.
Okay, but our whatever the thing of water was longer than this, so like
Oh
twice as
yeah,
long.
that was really
Yeah,
long.
700.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
but we
really
did
long.
give them 2 months to read it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Covenant of Water.
But
Yeah.
but all this AI stuff and what they're capable of it's really there. I know it is because I read about it in other walks of life.
Yeah.
And look what happened. Also, it's always creepy to me when I'm reading a book like this and then something happens. And I heard, what, 5 days ago when all the airlines started to shut down and everything, I said, oh, here we go.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
Yep.
When that all happened. Huh. What was surprised you about the book?
I I don't know if surprised is the right word, but found to be unrealistic, I'll go with the combined Democratic Republican Party. Early on, they described that in a very interesting way of like the two extremes coming together, against like a third extreme, I guess. um, I I would love to delve into an imaginary world and have more of an understanding of of how that came to be. So that's there's some comments made throughout the storyline that kind of throw back to some things that happened in between the two books. Like I said, because I read both, but that's one thing that's not addressed. It's just kind of like it happened. And I was like, really? How bad do things have to get for that to happen?
I saw that kind of. I could see that happening here to me, in our current world. If, for instance, MAGA became its own party, right,
Mhm.
and the Republicans that are, a little more.
Yeah.
Well, they're coming in with the Dems right now anyway.
Yeah. So if they came in and they could resolve it, and I could see them even being called the truthers, I mean, for God's sake,
I think that was I read into it that way. There was a reference to them being like, oh, the reason they combined was basically to, go back to the Constitution and not have a more of a what's the word I want? I want to use the word dictatorship, but that's not the word the book uses. But they reference that the most recent president Castro like consolidated too much power into himself personally, and they make reference of having his fourth term.
Yeah. And single party rule, they called it, right? Yeah.
Well, I was surprised. I shouldn't have been, but I was at all these romances. In other words, I guess I did not think in a future world, that this one would sleep with that one and then run over and, sabotage this one and that one. And I just was like, oh my gosh, they're still doing this.
And that one's Adam and Eve.
Right.
Yeah, that hasn't changed, has it?
No.
But did you wonder about how much of it was real love and how much of it was, government spy stuff?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Because a lot of that was going on too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
What about you, Kay? What do you think? What was one of your interesting impressions?
Well, it reminded me of the book of the Nobel Prize person who had gene altering that particular book that we read. So I was thinking of that as I was reading along.
Yeah. What was the name of that book anyway? The Code
Breaker.
Code breaker. That's what it was. Yeah. Yeah, I did have, yeah, because it talked about genetic engineering a lot, right? Yeah, for sure. What'd you like about the author's writing, or not? Whatever.
I'll jump in. So I actually listened to both on Audible audiobooks.
Oh, I bet it was a good book.
Yeah, which I don't often do. And I think this was a good one to do that way. It 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 read to me like a report, you know, and I think it like I feel like I heard each of the characters' voices differently when we go from chapter to chapter. It was it was sometimes almost like reading different characters' diaries in a way, you know. So I really like that about the writing style. I think that it changed like with each character's perspective. I don't know how much of that was like a little bit of good voice acting by the narrator, or if you guys would agree with that and having like read it on the page.
Well, I like the way they brought Sarah back and all that. That was so complicated and so interesting.
Yeah.
They may be able to do that in the future. We may be able to do it now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was the most sort of interesting part of the book to me.
Yeah. Did you think they brought her back? Or do you think she just never really?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean,
yeah. Although she did die there, they said that was her physical body there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
They made a reference to her. I think I'm the right one, right? Yeah, Sarah Hunt, the mother of what's her name? Lydia.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, got it the right one.
Julia, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Julia. I knew it was an. Oh God, I'm so bad at names. They made a reference that when she took her own life, but that she very specifically, like, because she was always such a control freak in life, you know, took a right mixture so that her physical body would not be damaged. And it's like a throwaway reference earlier on, you know, and then you get to like, you're like, oh, wait, what? But
yeah,
it's kind of it was interesting, you know. I couldn't help but I don't know if anybody watched the Amazon Prime. I think it's Amazon made for Amazon episode. Oh my gosh, I can't think right. The series Upload, but they use the word upload, so it's more of a comedy kind of fun show. If you're looking for something fun, Upload. The idea is in the future that when you die, your body's uploaded and you're living in this imaginary but computer world, but you can like call back, you can call the people who are still alive, like FaceTime kind of thing, and how much money you have depends on which resort you live in. So it's like a make your own heaven kind of thing. But you know, because the book used the word upload at one point and then starts talking about like combining things, it was interesting for me, the book having such a very serious scientific view of it and comparing it to this like real like comedy kind of show that imagined us, you know, a future with that technology as well. But I think also just the sign of the world's leaders are, you know, the ones who lead technology and control technology, whether that's the government or individual private investors.
Yeah.
You know, it feels very much like that's the way things are already headed. So it's not too hard to imagine that in only 30 years from now, that, you know, a lot of that could be realistic. And the whole idea of like a singularity being a leapfrog, I feel like we've already, you don't have to look back very far to see how much how technology is like escalating, not escalating, what's the word, like, but exponentially changing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because it's kind of to me, it was kind of combination of the singularity, a combination of what we know of as AI and genetic engineering, right? A combination of those two things. And it was almost too much to try to get my head around, really. But that was kind of what they were talking about. Is that what you guys got too?
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Well, and then the interconnectedness of it all. In other words, just like this week, some person in a computer, you know, uh, computer company did one wrong thing, and look how many companies it threw off.
Sure.
By the way, their PR department for that company must really be lax, because who did they put on to talk about it? But the guy who did it or was in charge of it all, and his name was Gang Chang. We all fear gangs, and that's the name they put up all the time. This was done by Gang Chang, and it's like, just of all the whole thing about the Asians, and I mean that should never have been let out there.
Yeah. Yeah, because that does sound like it's from, China or something, right? And
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
Cynthia, building on that, I read a piece about what happened earlier this week and so many systems going down because of that basically a bug in an upload update. And they were talking about, it was a post from a tech perspective that, testing is expensive and quality control is expensive and screening is expensive. And it's, eventually I think they did put ownership and responsibility like on one guy, but that, companies are meant to have things in place so that an error never gets that far, because humans make mistakes, right?
Right,
and
of course.
Again, looking at this book in 2054 and the greed of some companies, who wants to innovate for the sake of making it a better world and who wants to make a profit off of it.
Right.
And I too was thinking about like what happened this week and planes, being impacted, but the company, was it Cyber, whatever it is, or CrowdStrike, right? CrowdStrike.
Yep.
They clearly, I think it's clear now in hindsight that they cut some corners.
Yeah.
They thought they were safe enough.
Yeah.
There should have been protocols in place to prevent that. But I think corporate greed, more than a human's error, is probably what's to blame, right? Like humans make mistakes and that happens. Corporate greed is a choice.
And that was the same thing 2 years ago when Southwest couldn't fly for over a week, and that was strictly corporate greed. Their system was 23 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because I worked, as a in a software design company, and I was a tester and quality assurance and that kind of stuff that went on. And wow, it was a big deal when you did an implementation, and we did it over a weekend, and we put it in, and we did it to make sure it was like almost like a beta thing, make sure it was working okay, and nobody went home the whole weekend, and then finally, you'd get, and there would be some mistakes, but they would be little things, they weren't ever some humongous thing that took place because we'd already fixed all of those things, it was a huge quality control that we did, before that happened.
The software that was being like implemented into your bio self. I don't know what words to use. I'm making things up here now, right? Like,
yeah.
If we were in 2054, 2064, 2074, if your disease vaccine is programmed into your cells and somebody does an upload error, I don't like.
Right. Yeah, that'd be a big deal, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I hope it would be a big deal.
Yeah. Hey, all right, back to the book here. War with China 20 years ago. Twin catastrophes in San Diego and Galveston. What happened? Did you guys get a good feel for what transpired and all that? It just sounded like it was a disaster. I mean, it went back to, the way it happened with the Vietnam vets. They came home and everybody said we shouldn't have been in that war. They didn't give the vets any kind of recognition, whatever. What did you guys get the impression that happened? Or was it just too vague?
I know the answer because it's in the 2034 book, but you guys tell me if you want me to tell you or not. Because if you think you're
Yeah,
going to
tell us.
that, then I'd love for you to uncover it. If you want to know and you're not going to read it, I'll tell you.
No,
Tell
I
us.
want to know.
Was that a unanimous tell us? If anyone says no, you have to turn off your audio
No,
now.
and the only people that read 2054 are you and me and Kay and Cynthia. You got to ignore these two people in the middle here. See, so
Okay. So
And I didn't read it really, but
it's
okay.
2034, the 2 decades earlier book that Kelly said we didn't have to read, but if you do want to go back and read it, nuclear war breaks out. So the U.S. Makes the first strike, and the retaliation is San Diego and Galveston, and
Wow.
so nuclear war, and so that's where 2054 starts off with Sandeep Chowdhury flying back in, his ex-wife, but the mother of his daughter, right? And it's a contentious divorce throughout the book. Was in Galveston visiting her sister, and it's not where she lived. And so he finds out at the very end of the book that she has died in this. And that's kind of like at the escalation of the end of the book. And then there's reference to after that, there was more widespread disease and things. So they make reference also in 2054 to
Pandemic and stuff.
The late 2030s. And that's as a result of like the like poor sanitation and everything in those surrounding areas. And that is war with China, and India gets involved as well too in that. But it's very much a war with China and the US that starts as China interrupting the US's technology and escalates strategic nuclear war.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so then you come back.
Some of this stuff is way too realistic for me. You know,
Well,
I mean, it's
freaking
right?
scary. Yeah. You know, and then so I really liked that. That's where I said like I like that 2054 was not more nuclear war. Like it went a different direction. It went with like tech and the advancement of tech and the intellectual battles and almost like a spy thing going on, kind of sort of. Or you know, at least corporate espionage, or I don't know, whatever. Because I almost expected it to be a continuation of the same, and I was kind of glad that it wasn't, but still a lot of politics. But yeah, that I did like between the two books that it didn't hang on that. Again, like I said, it could stand by itself, but that's what they're alluding to. Yeah, nuclear.
That's good. Okay. All right. Thank you. I mean, you kind of suspected that, I think, but it didn't sound as devastating as most of the time when we hear about nuclear war. It sounds more devastating than that, you know? So
yeah, I think I liked that. Again, too, it was in just, you know, liking about the way it was written. I was a little apprehensive starting 2054 because I was like, oh God, is this going to be like a dystopian future kind of thing? But the fact that like the country still existed, well, at least in whole in the beginning, you know, but that, you know, there's references to like disease and periods of famine, but that in only 20 years, the country is more or less back on its feet, is still a major player in the world.
Right.
Like that the nuclear strikes were horrific, but didn't were not the end of the world.
Okay.
You know? Yeah. I like that about the series if I look at the two together.
Yeah. Well, and then they talk about then this, what you were talking about earlier, Kristin, Castro's consolidation of power after his victory in 2044, and then single party rule, because he codified that with sweeping electoral reforms, you know? And I mean, I know, I read stuff, and then I say Castro's consolidation of power, they said was a threat to democracy. And I'm like, okay, we just, you know, we're kind of living this right now.
We're all Americans, but we don't have any of the Canadians on tonight. It's all the American-based people.
Right.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, I know. So then I could see a truthers because, you know, I don't know. Anyway. All right. What is remote gene editing? You guys know? Does that change, without going actually into, I mean, I don't know. I don't understand what remote gene editing would be. Anybody know? We're just not that technologically. Because gene editing, obviously we know what that is, but remote gene editing implies that it would happen from, that I could change if I had the tools, I could change your genes from out here, Maybe that's part of what would happen with the singularity. I don't know, but
yeah, I imagined it like that you could like get an implant once, and I don't know if implant is the right word or not, get an injection of some microchips, nano thingamajiggies, right? I'm not a scientist here. let's say you got your nano chips implemented or injected once, like that, once that hardware was in you, that they could remotely send updates, right? So they made a reference at one point to like vaccines. So like you have COVID-19 and we make a vaccine. So when there's COVID-27, you don't have to go get a new injection. They would just like update the code of your I mean, I totally imagine, that's my imagination. I don't go tell people that what the science is now. This is Kristin's imagination of it. But that's how I imagined it working.
That's pretty good though, Kristin. I can see that. Kristin. Yeah, that makes sense what you're saying. So yeah, I can totally get that. Yeah, that makes sense. Huh. I'm
gonna go write a sci-fi book now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, you're ready for it. So what, they throughout this book, that whole singularity thing, people wanting it for the good, and then like you guys were talking about, some companies were just trying to make money or just trying to take it over so that they could take over the world or whatever, all these kinds of things. It was a power thing as well. What do you think of Sarah's decision to thwart the development?
Well, that's the human part of it all. I mean,
That's
we cannot predict, in the future what people are going to do or respond to things how.
Yeah. Yeah, she must have seen, she and the guy she was working with, I forgot his name now already, must have seen that it was going down a pathway where it wasn't going to be good, right? They couldn't control it enough for it to stay in the right hands or whatever. But she thwarted it in such a way that people couldn't even when they tried to come back to it, they ran into all these obstacles in being able to do it. So that's quite a, I don't know. I thought that was quite genius and you had to have a lot of capability in order to be able to stop it, from happening.
Well, I was reading this book just as last week as Vance was starting on his rants about controlling everything that a woman does and making sure she stays with a husband she doesn't want to be with, and any little part of her physical body. And I'm thinking, well, this is just a step like with the book. I mean, this, this control issue is always going to be a control issue.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope, right? Like,
yes, it is.
My mind is, wasn't it like a few decades ago already when they like cloned a sheep? Remember that?
Yes.
Right. And people were like, we should not have the ability to do that. And then like where do you go from there? And I know I had this conversation with friends of mine who used fertility clinics to help them get pregnant in their marriages, and they had multiple viable eggs and were given the choice of choosing a gender, like which one do you want to have? And you're like, is that? And I remember my friend said like it felt a little weird for a moment that she had that choice, because then you're like, what's the slope of like, what else can you choose? Like, should we as human be able to do that? And that doesn't seem so bad, right? But then you get into,
What else? Yeah.
you know, controlling genes remotely. Like, how many things could you control for? Like, are you curing illness, or are you like making superhumans? Probably doesn't also help that I'm simultaneously watching the last season of The Boys on Amazon, which I don't recommend to you guys. Has anyone watched that?
No.
What is it?
The Boys?
No.
Okay, so it's a whole lot of obscene language and a lot of violence.
Hmm.
But it's a fictional world, the current world today, that a pharmaceutical company, you guys are going to think I just do the strangest things all the time with these stories I'm going to tell tonight. Pharmaceutical company called Voight created a drug called V, and they had parents agreed for money to give it to their babies, and it makes superhumans. But the company controls the superhumans and basically like leases them to cities. So like Detroit and San Francisco, and, you know, like if you're a major city, you get a major superhero, and if you're like Trenton, you get like a B-list superhero. But the superheroes turn out to be like horrible people. Some of them are horrible, horrible people who now have superpowers and are like can't be defeated. Anyway, it's in its 4th season. It's doing well. You guys, you ladies are all a little too nice for me to actually make it a recommendation, but not a nice show. It's a violent show. But but it again, in reading and listening to 2054 at the same time, and this idea of controlling genes, and like the first reference to it was, remember the guy was in his lab and he's like trying to make the butterflies pretty so he can impress a girl.
Uh-huh.
How freaking innocent is that? But also weird. Like, you change the color of butterflies. It seems a little unnatural. And then you get, so I don't know. I guess there's a very long way of me saying, I think sometimes we do need to have some controls and say, you shouldn't develop this ability. But to Cynthia's point, who's to say then what's valid medicine and what's too far?
Yeah.
I know there's an awful lot of things that I'm very glad they exist, and that I think all people should have a right and access to.
Well, what about, I mean, way back when they started figuring out that you could graft different kinds of trees and stuff, or different types of plants, and make like an apple pear thing or something,
Right.
or whatever. Don't you think that back then people, if there was enough access to it with media or anything, that people would be saying, wait, you can't do that. That would, I don't know, that it's a slippery slope, but you just don't know, It's interesting to me. All right. The end of the book, Julia's graduating. Remember, Sarah's daughter?
Mm-hmm.
She crosses to the far side of the stage, and by the time she crossed the far side, she resolved to tell Hendrickson, her godfather, her secret. What secret? Do you know? Did you think of it? Is that her mom is still kind of alive, or something else? Or
I thought it had to do with her mother, but I don't know.
yeah. It's the sequel. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, they were built.
2074?
That was clear to
don't
me
know.
that they were building you for a sequel through the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Yeah. Yeah. Did you get that impression, Kay?
Haven't got quite to the very end, but so that sounds reasonable.
Oh, sorry. We screwed it up for you.
No, you didn't screw it up. A mere pages from being done.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like to me. It's like, oh, well, that's a setup for a sequel for sure. Yeah. All right. Speaking of recommendations, would you recommend this book for your friends? Why or why not?
Well, it's something to be looked at.
What would you hope they would get from it, Cynthia?
Well, an overall understanding of what might be possible. We're not sure all of it is, but we're, because we hear, again, what's possible right now. We hear that reality on a
Are you
television.
talking politically, or are you talking with the technology?
All of the above. In other words, like this week, we had political shifts, and we also had, like I said, about that was a corporate thing, but think how many lives that affected.
Yeah.
People not be able to go on the airline and do things. It was really something.
Well, it was
So
just a mistake, right? It was just a mistake. Where,
Right.
like Kristen was saying earlier, I'm surprised you all haven't spoken up of the fact that not being political, but in line with this conversation, that I think Elon Musk has pledged 45 million a month
Yep,
to the Trump campaign. I'm thinking the man just wants to own AI. And
yep,
what a fear if he can buy
Yeah.
either crypto or, I mean, if he's such a technology guy, period, you can't discount that. And is he just buying access to whatever it might be? I mean, that to me, when I think of, when I listen to y'all reading this book, I'm like, it's the first thing that comes across my mind is, you know, there's accidents and there's evil and there's control.
well, and if you read his book, his autobiography by Walter Isaacson, who did a very good job with it. It was wonderful. But if you read that, you find, he will pretty easily uh uh join any woman that wants to have more children. He'll donate sperm. He wants to have a whole
It's
group of,
Yeah. Yeah. He wants to propagate. Like, it's like, I
yeah,
think,
he does.
yeah.
yeah.
But, yeah, with the political thing, I was just glancing down today because I had such a day yesterday. I decided today to keep track. I just got my 48th request for money
Oh
today.
yeah.
Oh my God. I thought
And
of not reading them and actually counting at the end of the day, but oh,
it's just too many. But what it is they're, and by the way, most of them are joyful in the
Yep.
sense that, especially the feminist ones, because they're saying, okay, we have a chance to make a difference.
Yep.
yeah.
So
And
please
we
help
do.
us. Yeah, so, but at the same time, it just seems like overwhelming. Um, so whatever.
Anyway, I just had to
But,
throw that in because I was listening to you talk. I just, it's been top of mind for me. And
Barb, well said.
What did you say, Barb?
She's in the chat.
When someone complains to me about horrible politicians, I tell them I disagree. I think we have the very best politicians that money can buy. Yeah, well, okay.
That no, but yeah, it is there's a
Is
lot
there,
of there's a lot of things going on in the book, right? Because there's like politics of wanting to be liked, can I get reelected? There's the who's sleeping with who.
yeah,
There's the world players. There's, being led by the heavy investors, um, who are they themselves in it for different reasons. I just, yeah, I think the book is such a reflection on real life.
it
yeah,
is.
Answer your earlier question, I think that's why I want my friends to read it. To be like, look, this is a, I think a lot of books that, there's war or political strife. It's some kind of like dystopian future that's being led by teenagers for some reason, right? Like that's all the stories out there. And this is a somewhat near future, right? It's not
Right.
teen led dystopian future. It's not Star Trek where we're going to be a couple hundred years from now. This is a couple decades in the future. This is potentially still in our lifetimes, certainly, the next generation's lifetime. the generation that's alive right now, it's their adulthood that these things could occur on that timeline.
Yeah, and I mean, from what was happening in 2054, in the book, I mean, I could see that kind of stuff happening in our world way sooner than 2054, the way things are happening.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Anyway, yeah.
It is funny to do the math is funny. Like, it sounds like if you're like, oh, the year 2054, I'm like, that's so far away. And you're like, wait, 30 years from now. That's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, Kristin, I think obviously this book was written before AI was so accessible. And the things people are saying about AI right now are that the speed of the transfer of technology is going to warp out at something that we had no imagination for when the semiconductor to compared with AI. So maybe 2054 becomes 2034 because of AI,
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because AI is so very new, and this book's references come right up to 2054 is referencing things that happened in 2020 and 2021, historical references. It is a very recently written book with very recent references, and yet as recent as it is, AI, as we know AI today, didn't even exist yet. Like the fact that is so new and so abundant immediately.
Yeah. But probably only in the last 18 months.
Yeah.
So anyway.
George Orwell's book 1984
right
was published in 1949, so it was looking ahead 35 years.
Ooh, nice call, Barb. That was like a really important piece of information to know right now.
Wow.
Huh.
Well,
Cheryl,
yeah.
are you gonna take August off, or do you love your compadres here that are consistent and say, let's do? Did you guys have a book? You had the women, right?
Yeah. And August 27th, we have the women, and I think we'll probably end up with some other people coming.
What's the 27th?
Yeah, 27th of August. Yeah.
Oh, and we need to put up. The Women is such an easy book to read, and of course, it's so much about the Vietnam War and how people, and especially women, were treated as they came home. So it's very and women's rights and all. I think it's very of interest with the current situation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check and see how many pages it is, and I'll put a post on the sanctuary in the
woods.
And
it has a nice flow to it too. It's the kind of book that you will sit down and you say, "Oh," and you just keep going and going until you're done.
Yeah. Cool. Have you read it already, Kay?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I know you've read it, right, Cynthia? You read it already.
I've had a book.
Yeah.
I've had a book club discussion about it, but
yeah.
And I've also had several friends that read it. See, the Vietnam War was very, that was my era.
Sure.
So, and I didn't lose a lot of fellas to it because in my era, if you went to college, and I went to a college prep high school, if you went to college, you were exempt.
Yeah.
So that was a fluke too of the whole thing, and that, I didn't know that many, but I knew some, and the way the woman is treated is just phenomenally horrible and interesting, and the way she writes it is very nice.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to read. Yeah, we'll still go with it, and I will try to put some things in my planner so I remember to send out a couple more book club things, reminders and stuff for people. So hopefully some other people will.
For some reason, this one sneaked up on me.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just
spaced
out on the text, and
with the women, put in there that it is, from what I've read online and stuff, it's just been wildly accepted across the U.S. So most local libraries have it now,
Oh, okay.
both so you can download it from your computer and or you can go pick it up.
Cool.
By the way, I don't know if this is happening where all of you are, but the newest, I shouldn't call it a fad, but the newest service among libraries, my own in Little New Buffalo here, over in Chesterton, Indiana, they do it. If a book club, or in Three Oaks, if a book club decides to read a book, well, they'll give you a list, and they have bags of 10 books, and you can take it to your next book club and distribute so that people that, don't want to buy the book or can't buy the book can be involved. I think that's a wonderful library service.
Wow, that's cool. You mean they'll
Yeah.
give you, like, if you were going to read the women, they'd give you 10
In
of the
a
woman
big
to
bag
take?
and say, take
Wow.
this to your next meeting. Yep.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's happening a lot around here. The other thing is that, of course, everybody is allowing through interlibrary use to go online and be able to download to their Kindles
Yeah.
through their library membership. That's a new thing too, but there's
Wow.
different ways to get books now, which is great.
Yeah, that is great because some people don't want to or can't afford to go out there and spend, $15 a book or whatever whenever we do another one, right? Or more than that if you actually get a book, I guess sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to read that. And then for those of you on the cruise, we're advertising a cruise book club, Westport by James Comey. So,
Westport, did you say?
yeah,
Okay.
Westport. Yeah. And we'll do it near the end of the cruise. There's 2 sea days at the end of the cruise. And so one of those sea days we'll meet to do that. Okay, you can still get in. I promise you can still get in.
We've saved a seat for you, Kay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, but no.
Oh, Lordy.
Before you
I
all
just
wrap up,
wrote it.
I have a cartoon I want to share with you. I don't know if I couldn't get it to send to my email or anything, but I thought this group might appreciate it. I'm going to try and hold my phone up and see if you can see it at all.
Oh, it's too bright. Wait. Okay, wait, it's coming into focus. I can see the picture, but I can't read the words.
The words say, and to think that we started out as a book group.
And they're bank robbers.
Yes. Well,
Well, one of the book clubs in my town here, they're an interesting group. They're all quite a bit younger than I am. I asked them about if they serve food. My book club serves food. And their answer was, oh no, we have to get the kids in bed before we come to book club. So, but then they said that they have become such close friends. They've lost a couple women, but they have 10 now, and they're not going to add people because they're so close. And last year they went to Iceland together.
Wow.
yeah, they travel together. Isn't that cool?
Isn't that
That's
cool?
awesome. Yeah.
And they also you are in charge 1 month each person, and I mean that means you develop the questions, you research it well, and which is another way to do a book club, but yeah. So, and
Yeah.
Cheryl's coming down for those that don't know, to my book club, which I have on my porch once a year. I mean, other people, another woman has it most of the year, but and we do serve after we talk about the book. But we've had this once before. We're having an author. We're doing a book called I Surrender, and it's the story of the revolution in Chile in 1975. And this woman at that time was just graduating from Notre Dame. And in the book, I got the feeling, I kept wondering if she would become a nun. She did not, I found out. She's a
Right.
social worker.
Yeah.
But she has a house here in New Buffalo. I'm only 30 miles from Notre Dame. So anyway, so we're going to do that book and she'll be here and that'll be nice.
That'll be interesting. I was really surprised. I mean, I learned a lot about Catholic
Yeah, me too.
charity work, social work, if you will, whatever, justice work, that I didn't realize that they did so much of that, and that it was huge. So anyway. Well, awesome. Well, thank you all for coming. I thought it was a rousing conversation.
Cheryl, did you like the book? I don't know if you said, did you like it?
Me?
Yeah.
I, I don't know. I'm not sure I would call it liking the book. I thought it was interesting. It was hard for me to follow because it just kept moving from thing to thing to thing. And even when I watch TV, sometimes I can't follow it because it's too fast for me. But it was a little bit fast for me, but it was really interesting to me the way to me, the political stuff and then the biology and technology stuff together were so right on with what's going on in our world today. I just was like, wow, I actually was like, I wish we could have the Democratic and Republican Party, those that would pull it together, come together and be called the truthers and decide that they have to stay together because, they can't have this guy that has this consolidation of power be a threat to democracy. I was like, yes, go for it. Yes, but that's just me.
Nice.
Nice. But anyway, I don't know. Did you guys like it? I mean,
I enjoyed it. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to pay attention because it was all over the place. Who is this guy again? Who's this person? And go back and figure out who they were. But after a while, you started getting used to them, right? But in the beginning, it seemed like a lot of disparate stories, to me. So anyway, did you like it, Kay?
I wouldn't say use the word like either. And I'm with you that felt like it was very disjointed. I was reading it on my Kindle on my phone actually, and so I would often go back up to the top of one section to figure out the date and see what with the sequence, and it's like I couldn't keep track of that part of it, so I mostly gave up with that. But I wouldn't have used the word like.
Yeah. All right, Cynthia, you? Well, you're not quite finished, but still.
No, I'm finished. I would, again, like, okay, I would never use the word like. Am I glad I read it? Yes. The part that bothered me the most, as I said, was this sleeping around business. But because I guess I'm sort of so sick of that because Darlene was in the corporate world and she would have all this intrigue in her office. Her boss was sleeping with someone that Darlene reported to Darlene. You can imagine that.
Wow.
She dare not touch Beverly because Arthur would get mad. I mean, that whole corporate thing is, phenomenal. And to see it in this book, it was like it was discouraging to me. But
yeah,
it's life. It's real life. So yeah, am I glad I like to ask the question, am I glad I read it? Yes, I'm glad I read it.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably more like what you would answer too, right, Kristin and Kay? Glad you read it because it expanded your awareness or helped you see things a little bit, so okay. All right, Jovi, close us out then. I think we're done. Is we done, guys?
Yes, thank
you.
you.
All right, my friends, I'm going to stop the recording and then your hair can look just like hell for all I care. All right, so but here we go. Bye-bye from July, and we'll see you shortly in August, the 27th for women when we hear a fabulous, easy summer read. See you then.
Yeah, good.
Bye.